In the lively city of Kumasi, Ghana, Zuri believed she had found something special with Kwame. He was charming, always surrounded by people, and made her feel seen, at least at first. She told her friends he was different, someone who understood her dreams and made her laugh. For a while, it felt real. She trusted him. She opened up, even shared her deepest insecurities, thinking he'd protect them like secrets. But one evening changed everything. They were out with his friends, gathered at a small roadside spot, the kind with loud music, grilled meat, and easy laughter. Zuri sat beside Kwame, smiling shyly, trying to feel like she belonged. Then someone made a joke about girlfriends and upgrades. And out of nowhere, Kwame laughed and said, "She's just a project, not a prize." The group burst into laughter, loud and sharp. And then came the word that cut deepest. Ugly. It echoed. It didn't matter who said it first. The laughter that followed burned more than any insult. Zuri froze. Her face went hot, but she didn't let a single tear fall. Not there, not in front of them. She smiled tightly, the kind that hides hurt, and stayed silent. But something inside her cracked. She wasn't just embarrassed. She was shattered, because the boy she trusted had turned her into a joke. She walked away that night not just from Kwame, but from a version of herself that had believed his love was real. And though she didn't cry in front of them, that night began a storm inside her that would soon turn into something powerful. Zuri got home that night with a lump in her throat and silence in her chest. She closed the door gently, as if making too much noise would break her even more. She didn't turn on the lights at first. She just stood there in the dark, feeling everything all at once. The shame, the anger, the confusion. Her heart was heavy, but her face stayed dry. She hadn't cried, not even when the word ugly echoed in her mind like a cruel song stuck on repeat. But the hurt was there, sitting deep in her bones. When she finally turned on the light and looked into the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. She leaned in closer. Was her nose really that wide? Were her eyes too small? Was her skin too dark, too uneven, too wrong? Every little thing Kwame and his friends had joked about started to look like the truth. Before that night, she liked her reflection. She didn't think she was a model, but she felt okay in her own skin. Now, all she could see were flaws. The girl staring back at her wasn't Zuri anymore. She looked tired, broken, small. She picked up her makeup bag, trying to fix it, to cover the sadness sitting just beneath her skin. But no amount of foundation could hide the damage he did with a few careless words. She wiped it off and tried again and again until she gave up. The pain wasn't on her face. It was in her heart, and makeup doesn't fix that. For days, she avoided the mirror completely. She barely left her room. She ignored calls, skipped meals, pulled the curtains closed, and let the world go on without her. The girl who used to hum while doing her hair, who smiled at her own reflection in passing windows, was gone. Now, even looking at herself made her feel like a joke, like she wasn't enough, like maybe Kwame had been right. That was the worst part. Not what he said, but that a part of her had started to believe it. In those quiet days, Zuri felt invisible, forgotten. She wondered if she'd ever feel confident again, ever feel beautiful without needing someone else to say so. Her mirror didn't lie, but her heart was too bruised to see the truth. And still, deep down, something small remained. A tiny spark, buried under all the pain. Not quite hope yet, but not gone either. One quiet night, long after midnight, Zuri couldn't sleep. Her room was dark, except for the soft blue glow of her phone screen. She wasn't even sure why she was scrolling through old pictures. Maybe trying to remember who she used to be before everything fell apart. Photo after photo passed. Birthdays, beach days, random selfies with silly filters. Then she stopped. There was one photo. She was laughing, full of joy, her eyes bright, her skin glowing in the sunlight. She looked happy, not perfect, not flawless, but real, alive. For a moment, Zuri just stared. That girl in the photo didn't look ugly. She looked like someone who loved herself, someone who hadn't yet been called a project or humiliated in front of strangers. And then it hit her. She was never the problem. Kwame was. His words were not truth. They were poison. And she had swallowed them like medicine. That night, for the first time in weeks, something inside her woke up. It wasn't anger. It was defiance. A small voice whispered, "What if I don't let him define me? What if I decide what beauty looks like?" Her eyes wandered to the old wooden shelf near her bed. On it sat a dusty book her grandmother once gave her, full of homemade skincare recipes passed down through generations. Zuri had forgotten about it. She picked it up, her hands shaking a little. The cover was worn. The pages smelled of herbs and old paper. Her grandmother always said, "Nature holds healing, but your hands give it power." Zuri opened the first page. There were notes written in faded ink. How to mix shea butter with coconut oil. The perfect blend of turmeric and honey for glowing skin. The benefits of aloe vera. It was like her grandmother was there with her, whispering strength into her ears. She read every word like it was scripture. That night, she didn't cry. She didn't hide. She didn't try to cover her face. Instead, she tied her hair up, washed her face gently, and began mixing her first batch of a homemade face mask. Her kitchen turned into a small lab. Bowls, spoons, oils, jars. The scent of fresh herbs filled the room. As she spread the cool mixture across her skin, it wasn't just about beauty anymore. It was about reclaiming herself, healing herself, loving the girl in the mirror again, not for how she looked, but for surviving what she had. She didn't know it yet, but that small spark of defiance, that quiet moment in the middle of the night, would one day light up an empire. Zuri's tiny kitchen became her safe place. It wasn't fancy, just a single counter, a small fridge, and a shelf packed with old jars and cooking spices. But to her, it felt like a new beginning. She started spending hours there every day, mixing natural ingredients with care, testing different combinations on herself. She had no formal training, no lab coats or expensive machines, just her hands, her heart, and her grandmother's recipe book. She started with aloe vera, scooping the gel straight from the plant, feeling its coolness on her skin. Then she added raw shea butter, thick, golden, and rich. Something her grandmother had always said was a gift from the earth. Turmeric followed, with its bright yellow glow, known for healing and brightness. She read articles, watched videos, asked older women in the neighborhood for tips. Some nights, she got it wrong. The mixture would be too thick, too oily, or cause a small rash. But she didn't give up. She kept going, learning as she failed. Day by day, her skin started to change. The dullness faded, the glow came back, not just from the ingredients, but from the love she was finally showing herself. Every time she looked in the mirror, she began to see strength, not the broken girl from that night with Kwame, not the girl who hid behind closed curtains. This Zuri was different, softer, yet stronger. After weeks of testing, she created her first real product, a soft, creamy moisturizer that smelled of nature and felt like silk on the skin. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She poured it into a small glass jar, labeled it with a handwritten sticker, and stared at it for a long time. What should she call it? The word came to her like a whisper. Nia. It meant purpose in Swahili, and that's exactly what this was for her. A new purpose, a new beginning. Under the name, she wrote two simple words: born again. Zuri held the jar in her hands and smiled, a real smile this time, not one forced for the world. She didn't know if anyone would ever buy it. She didn't care, because for the first time, she had created something out of her pain, something beautiful, something healing, and maybe, just maybe, someone else out there needed it too. Zuri sat on her bed one morning, holding the jar of her homemade cream, Nia, born again, and wondered if anyone would ever believe in it the way she did. Her heart raced a little as she opened the camera on her phone. She wasn't wearing makeup, just her usual glow from weeks of using her own product. She took a photo of herself now and placed it next to an old one, from the time when she barely looked in the mirror, when her eyes were tired and her skin had lost its shine. She hesitated before posting. Her hands hovered over the screen. What if people laughed? What if no one cared? But she had nothing left to lose. She had already been laughed at before. So she hit post. The caption was simple. They said I was ugly. I chose to heal instead. Nia born again. The first few hours? Silence. A few likes from cousins. One emoji from her aunt. Nothing major. Zuri tried not to feel disappointed, but deep inside, a little voice asked, what if this dream is just mine? But the next day, everything changed. A local lifestyle blogger, someone with thousands of followers, somehow found her post and shared it. She wrote, "This glow is everything. What's this cream? Who is she?" Suddenly, Zuri's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Comments started flooding in. Wait, what product is this? Is this really natural? Girl, you're glowing. I need this ASAP. Her inbox filled with messages from strangers, women, students, even mums, all asking the same thing. How can I buy this cream? Zuri's hands shook as she typed replies. She had only made a few extra jars, thinking she'd give them to friends, or maybe sell one or two. But now, people were ready to pay. That night, she stayed up late, printing small labels, cleaning jars, and carefully scooping her cream into each one with a spoon. Every jar felt like a piece of her heart being handed to someone else. She sold her first 50 jars in just 3 days. Every sale came with a message, not just thanks, but real stories. My skin's been breaking out for months. I stopped feeling pretty after my breakup. This gives me hope. Zuri read every single one, sometimes with tears in her eyes. The same pain she once hid from was now the thing that connected her to others, from laughter to likes, from shame to sales. Zuri had turned her story into something powerful, and for the first time, people weren't laughing at her, they were cheering her on. Zuri couldn't believe it. 50 jars, gone in just 3 days. She stood in her kitchen holding the last empty container, a quiet smile on her face. What started as a way to heal herself was now helping others too, and now, people wanted more, a lot more. That's when she knew this wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a brand, her brand. She carefully counted the money she made from those first sales, every CD feeling like a piece of proof that her dream was real. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to take the next step. She knew she couldn't keep using recycled jars and handwritten labels forever. If people were taking her seriously, she had to take herself seriously too. She went to a small print shop in town and asked about professional label. She chose soft, earthy colors that reminded her of nature and her grandmother's recipe. The design was simple but beautiful. Elegant script spelled out the name Nia, born again, with a small leaf at the corner. It felt personal, honest. She didn't want to look like a big, fancy company. She wanted to look like a woman who turned her pain into power, because that's exactly what she was. Next, she found a supplier for small glass jars and eco-friendly packaging. She wanted every jar to feel like a gift, something beautiful, something healing. She even tied tiny thank you notes to each one, with a message that read, "You are more than enough." With the little money she had left, she rented a small wooden stall at a busy street market in Accra. It wasn't much, just a shaded spot between a fruit stand and a clothes vendor. But it was hers. She painted a sign by hand and hung it above the stall. Naya Skin, made for the ones who were told they weren't enough. That slogan came from deep inside her. It was for the girl she used to be, standing in front of the mirror, believing someone else's cruel word. And it was for every other girl who had ever felt too dark, too scarred, too different. Zuri wasn't just selling skincare. She was selling self-worth, healing, a reminder that beauty doesn't need permission. On her first day at the market, a young woman stopped by the stall, picked up a jar and whispered, "I've been looking for something like this." Zuri smiled, her eyes soft but steady. She knew exactly what the woman meant, because once she had been looking too. The brand had begun, not in a fancy office or with a big investor, but in a small kitchen with natural ingredients, broken pride, and a heart that refused to stay silent. It had been a full year since Zuri sold her first jar, a year of long nights, early mornings, and hands stained with turmeric and shea. Her small stall at the Accra Street Market had grown popular. Women stopped by, not just to buy creams, but to share stories, ask for advice, or simply say thank you. Her products were now lined up neatly on polished wooden shelves, each one glowing under the soft golden light she had installed herself. The once handwritten labels had become sleek, professional, but still filled with heart. Her stall felt like home, her safe space, her victory. Then one afternoon, as the market buzzed with energy, a familiar voice sliced through the air like a cold wind. "Hi, do you have anything for dark spots?" he asked casually, eyes scanning the jars on display. Zuri froze for half a second. Her heart skipped. It was him, Kwame, the same man who once laughed at her in front of his friends. The one who called her a project, not a prize. The same voice that had made her feel like she didn't belong in her own skin. But today, he didn't recognize her. She had changed, not just on the outside, her skin now glowing, her confidence steady, but deep within. The old Zuri would have looked away, maybe even hidden behind the shelves. But this Zuri stood tall. She smiled gently. "Yes," she said, handing him a tester. "This one helps with dark spots and scars. Works best if you stay consistent." Kwame looked at her a little closer now. Something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, recognition, shock. "Wait," he said slowly. "Zuri." She nodded, calm and unbothered. "The same." There was an awkward pause. He looked her up and down, clearly trying to figure out how the girl he once mocked had become this. "Wow, you're really glowing." Zuri smiled wider now, her voice soft but sharp. "Ugly girls don't run beauty empires, right?" Kwame opened his mouth, but no words came out. Zuri didn't need an apology. She didn't need revenge. She had already won, not just in business, but in spirit. The girl he tried to break had built something beautiful from the ruins. And now, she was standing in front of him, not as someone begging for love, but as a woman who had found it within herself. He awkwardly nodded, muttered something about maybe coming back, and walked away. Zuri turned back to her shelf, restocking a few jars like nothing had happened. Inside, her heart was calm. That moment, the one she once dreamed about, had come, and she didn't need to shout or brag. She just stood in her power, quiet, glowing, unshaken, and the stall kept buzzing with new customers. Zuri had no idea someone was recording. The day Kwame walked into her stall, she was just doing what she always did, showing up for herself. When she gave him that quiet smile and said, "Ugly girls don't run beauty empires, right?" It wasn't for show. It wasn't revenge. It was simply truth, a truth she had earned through pain, through healing, through hard work. But someone nearby, a customer standing a few feet away, caught the entire moment on their phone. The camera shook slightly, but the audio was clear, her words ringing out like a mic drop. They posted it on TikTok with the caption, "He called her ugly. Now she owns a skincare brand. This is how you glow up with grace." By the next morning, the video had gone viral. Ghana couldn't stop talking about it. Thousands of people watched, rewatched, and shared it. Tweets poured in. From insult to empire became a trending phrase. People were tagging their friends, using Zuri's words as captions under their own glow-up photos. Memes, remixes, reaction videos. It spread fast. But what stood out most were the comments. "She gave me chills. I needed this today. Her glow is louder than revenge. This is what healing looks like." Journalists reached out for interviews. Bloggers wrote articles about her journey, not just as a businesswoman, but as a symbol of quiet strength. Suddenly, Zuri wasn't just a name at a market stall. She was a movement. She was invited to speak at women's empowerment events across the country. She stood on stages she never imagined, in rooms filled with women of all ages, students, mothers, CEOs, all listening to her story. At first, she was nervous. Her voice shook, but then she remembered who she was speaking for, the girls who were still standing in front of mirrors, doubting themselves because of someone else's words. She shared everything, not just the success, but the nights she cried, the mornings she wanted to give up, the moments she felt invisible. She talked about how healing isn't instant, how self-love takes work, and how your pain doesn't have to be your ending. It can be your beginning. People didn't just want to buy her cream anymore. They wanted to be part of her story. Her journey became bigger than skincare. It became about survival, about reclaiming power, about turning hurt into healing and silence into voice. And through it all, Zuri stayed grounded. She still mixed her products with care, still smiled at every customer who walked into her stall. But now, when she looked around, she saw more than jars and shelves. She saw proof that grace could be louder than revenge, and that sometimes the softest voice can start the biggest wave. Zuri never dreamed it would go this far. What started in her tiny kitchen, just her, a few jars, and her grandmother's old recipes, had now grown into something she could barely believe. Nia, her skincare brand, wasn't just selling in Accra anymore. It was on shelves in Lagos, Abidjan, Dakar, and even in beauty shops as far as Freetown. Her dream had crossed borders, spoken new languages, and touched women she had never even met. One morning, Zuri woke up to her phone buzzing non-stop. Her assistant had texted her one simple sentence. "You're on the cover of Afrostyle." She gasped, thinking it had to be a joke. But when she opened the photo, there it was. her face glowing, proud, powerful, framed by the words, "The woman who turned pain into power." It didn't feel real at first. Just a year ago, she'd been afraid to post a selfie. Now she was on the cover of one of the biggest fashion and lifestyle magazines in Africa. And it wasn't because of fame or a scandal. It was because of her strength. The article told her story from beginning to now. The heartbreak, the healing, the hustle. It didn't glamorize her pain, but it celebrated how she rose above it. And it made other women believe that they could too. Soon after, she started seeing her brand's billboards all across Accra. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her, but there she was, standing tall, holding a jar of Nia, born again, with the words, "Made for the ones who were told they weren't enough." The same streets where she once walked with her head down were now filled with her face, her glow, her story. The same corners where she felt invisible were now cheering her name. She received awards too. Young Entrepreneur of the Year, Ghana Beauty Icon, Woman of Resilience. But it wasn't the trophies that touched her most. It was the letters, the emails, the girls who wrote to say, "Because of you, I started my own business." Or, "I finally see myself as beautiful." That was her real reward. Even in big rooms filled with cameras and flashing lights, Zuri stayed the same. She still used the original recipe, still smiled at her customers, still took the time to respond to messages from girls who felt lost. She hadn't forgotten who she was before the glow-up. In fact, she carried that girl with her. Every step of the way. The world now saw her as a success story, but Zuri knew better. She wasn't just a brand owner or a cover star. She was proof that even when the world tries to break you, you can rise and shine brighter than ever before. Zuri often says she didn't just build a skincare brand. She built a mirror. Not the kind that shows you what the world wants you to see, but the kind that reminds you of who you really are, even when you've forgotten. And if you ask her what she wants every girl to know, she'll tell you this. They'll name your flaws to hide their own. They'll call you too dark, too fat, too skinny, too much, or not enough. But their words don't get to define you. Beauty isn't in their opinion. It's in your power. Zuri knows what it feels like to believe a cruel comment, to let someone's judgment sit heavy on your skin like dirt you can't scrub off. But she also knows what it feels like to wash that off, slowly, gently, until what's left is something real and radiant. Not perfect, but powerful. When girls wear Nia, they're not just applying a cream. They're wearing her journey. Every tear, every trial, every small step back to self-love. And somehow that glow spreads. From one girl to another. From shame to confidence. From silence to voice. Zuri's message is clear. You are allowed to bloom, even if someone once tried to bury you. You are allowed to define your own kind of beautiful. And when you do, the world will either adjust or move out of your way.